If you're ever out of ideas what's the next character you should add to your team, then these are the top 5 recommendations for you when it comes to building a fast composition without thinking too much about every single aspect. And these characters all pretty much work as amazing support teammates. But first, a quick word from today's sponsor. This video is sponsored by Raid Shadow Legends, which has been taking over mobile gaming like no one else and lets the players collect hundreds of amazing looking champions that you can use to beat dungeons, bosses, and arena battles. For example, using Cold Heart almost feels like a cheat code, since you can steal a turn from any of the bosses and let your team act again, and the best part, she's only a rare, so it's easy to obtain her. There's also Arbiter that revives your teammates, gives awesome attack buffs, and she's a legendary hero that you can get for free after playing the game. And right now in Faction Wars, we have an orc team that's getting close to beating this insane lord. Raid also recently introduced Doom Tower mode, which has hundreds of floors full of secrets, unique bosses, and deadly enemies, and is one of the best ways to test your team building knowledge. So if you want to get the best head start, you can download Raid on your mobile or PC and get 1 clan boss key, 1 energy refill, 1 XP boost, 5 mystery shards, 50 gems and 50,000 silver, and an epic executioner champion, which you can claim all of this from your inbox. So if you want to support this channel and get a lot of free stuff, make sure to click on the download link in the description. The more you play the game, the more you start to realize that the need for a dedicated healer certainly goes down, and finding alternative ways to keep your team alive is the best route to optimize your own team's performance when it comes to damage output. But for someone like Diona, this isn't much of an issue, as she's surprisingly more than just a healer and has a variety of uses, all of which are widely applicable to nearly any team composition. And probably the most important thing about her is her shielding ability for the team, which unlike healing, can enable multiple uses ranging from Geo Resonance bonus to certain 5-star weapons, or even the one and only Retracing Bolide artifact set. And all of the things mentioned only work if you have a shield active on the equipped character, and Diona won't shy away from giving a constant supply of these icy bubbles around you. And more importantly, cryo and cryo debuffs are one of the worst things you can get thrown at when doing challenging endgame content like the Spiral Abyss, and that's mainly because stamina management is a big issue, and back when the game launched before the final floor was changed, the cryo cages and icicles were some of the worst hazards you had to deal with and prevented many from clearing this challenging floor. But even ignoring this huge benefit, Cryo Element itself is extremely flexible thanks to elemental reactions like Melt, Freeze, and Superconduct, all of which are crucial, with the former being the most important when trying to help out your pyro damage dealers. Finally, the fact that her attacks are ranged will help you avoid close combat encounters when using her as your support, and you will be able to position your elemental skill and bursts more easily. So in essence, Diona is basically a healer with a lot of benefits, and it's almost amazing how you can throw her into any team composition and always find a use for her. Now for an honorable mention, it's going to be Kaeya, which everyone has access to, and while he won't keep your team alive, his constant supply of cryo debuffs is very admirable and can up your elemental reactions gameplay without needing to dump too many resources into him. But even more surprisingly, your investments can pay off even more if you decide to convert him into your main damage dealer, because he can be a very competent one, and that's mainly thanks to the introduction of the cryo artifacts from Dragonspine. If you're ever in the need of an extra pair of attacks thrown into the mix, look no further, because Xingqiu has got you covered. And while previously mentioned Diona is all about utility and keeping the team alive, this Bookworm more or less can do the same, except he can literally deliver devastating damage thanks to his strong scaling elemental skill and burst that will make your main damage dealer fall in love with him. And what's amazing about his burst is that it basically works with any character that can do strong normal attacks, which works out even better if it's Pyro or Cryo, which can either deliver massive vaporized damage or freeze your targets in place. And another thing that makes him into a no-brainer choice for easy team builds would be his constellations, which all of them provide an even bigger damage growth for him. But what's truly mind-boggling is that his elemental skill also provides damage mitigation and healing, which, as previously mentioned, having other selling points than just being a healer is important for late game, but in this case, Xingqiu treats his healing as a nice little side hustle he likes to do, while in reality, he will help you deliver insane amounts of damage just from his bursts alone. So at this point, there's basically almost no risk when including him into your team, and even in the specific few cases where he could be lackluster, such as using him together with Ganyu, you can still sneak in a normal shot after using her charged attack, which ends up as a nice damage rotation. Although, to be fair, this is really thanks to the insane power of the Cocoa Goat's bloom damage we're getting. And as for the honorable mention, somewhat similar, although coming from a different element, would be Beidou, and while her elemental skills certainly requires you to getting used to, and can be bothersome for some players who prefer a more casual playstyle, her elemental bursts works in a very similar way when compared to Xingqiu, although it will certainly deal less damage and provide a less desirable electro for reactions, but she can definitely work as a great building block for any team you're looking to enhance, not to mention it will also help you reduce incoming damage and even provide you resistance to getting interrupted for when you're busy doing those charge attacks. The tides have definitely turned, and with the recent introduction of geo-resonance changes and complete overhaul of Zhongli's talents, we now have an irreplaceable party member that you can pretty much use in any team composition thanks to several factors. First of all, the amount of damage absorption you get from his Jade Shield is absolutely ridiculous and trivializes nearly every single encounter in the Spiral Abyss, not to mention now it shreds away 20% of any type of resistance of nearby enemies, which means not only is your character protected from incoming damage, but the enemies around you are also going to get slaughtered faster. The pillar also comes as a nice little bonus, which you can use for additional source of damage and create a constant supply of crystals underground, not to mention most of incoming projectile attacks can be stopped. Now combine this together with low cost, low cooldown burst, and you've got yourself a teammate that provides multiple uses, which also includes very competent damage. But obviously one other big selling point he has is the full arcade Petra set you can equip on him and amp up your elemental damage dealer's attacks, with the only requirement being that the Geo Archon himself needs to pick up the crystals from the ground, which thankfully allows him to feel even more immersed in his roleplay of a regular peasant. Also, for an honorable mention would be Albedo, who can do a lot of things similar to Zhongli, but there's definitely a gap between the two when it comes to providing better shields or even reducing the enemy's resistance, but at least in the damage department, you could say Albedo knows his stuff better, and it's always satisfying to trigger that bloom damage on a group of enemies. You cannot have a big damage number showcase without this unlucky adventurer present in your team, and it's clear that Bennett has established himself as one of the top and literally the easiest characters to add to absolutely any team build thanks to the way his burst works. And at this point, what makes him even more insanely useful as an easy addition to any team comp would be the cheap cost to build him, since all you really need for him is a weapon with good base attack and some energy recharge thrown in, since the only thing that scales with his burst damage bonus is the base attack from his own level and the weapon he has equipped, so having artifacts with additional attack won't have any effect on this, and while this means we aren't able to produce bigger damage numbers, at least we also literally don't need that much to make him usable from the get-go. The only thing that drags him down is that without his first constellation, you have to deal with the annoying condition of the burst, where it will only provide that damage increase for characters who are under a certain health threshold. And what's even more ironic is that while his first constellation is super useful, the last constellation can actually have a negative impact on the amount of team building options you could use him for, so keep an eye out and decide responsibly if you ever end up in this situation. But for many of us, we will keep this red exclamation mark for a while. But when it comes to an honorable mention, then it would definitely have to be Xiangling, and it's mostly thanks to the fact she is from Pyro just like Bennett, which lets you trigger two most powerful reactions of Melt and Vaporize, but even better, her support capabilities are through the roof, and you can easily deploy her Gooba and Pyronado within few seconds, and then switch to the next party member and enjoy the benefits. Without any doubt, the single most broken character in the game that turns any encounter into a joke would be the Anemo Archon himself, and he's absolutely the most no-brainer choice when it comes to nearly any team composition you're going to be building. And there's not much to say about him, other than the fact there are a few slight drawbacks when you're doing combo attacks, and it has to do with the vortex his burst produces, which some character skills or bursts have trouble reaching, so take this into account by first checking to see if you can unleash all the damage by actually clarifying if those attacks land. But other than this, once you get a taste of this power of grouping enemies with zero effort, it's going to be hard to go back to the old ways. And what's even more unreal is that he can also produce very good elemental damage, so you can easily turn him into a damage support with an insane crowd control ability. And to make things even more disgusting, his elemental skill produces a ton of energy, so your only concern is going to be how soon you can prepare for the next powerful damage rotation. Finally, for an honorable mention, even if she's nowhere as close to Venti, Sucrose can definitely still provide very decent crowd control with her elemental skill and burst, and this becomes even more relevant if you have her first constellation and sacrificial fragments equipped for those extra elemental skills. And in all honesty, Sucrose fulfills a completely different purpose, and that's mainly to boost your team's elemental mastery, which can range from insanely useful in early to mid-game, and then becoming even more relevant once you start capitalizing on those melt and vaporize reactions. One character that couldn't make the cut, but deserves more than an honorable mention, would be Fischl, and she's been consistently providing value in the game since its launch, even if there are currently problems with Electro being somewhat lackluster, and things like overload and knocking your enemies away surely doesn't help when it comes to time-sensitive challenges, but because of her powerful constellations, strong gacha weapons like the Stringless, and even her own constellations, which raise her power in big chunks, she definitely deserves the spotlight, and you can easily include her into any of your teams when you're looking for that extra damage that her Raven will be able to produce. Speaking of which, producing this video itself does take a while, so make sure to support us by subscribing and most important of all, enabling the bell notifications on, which actually helps out the channel massively and gives us more opportunities to produce new and different videos. And of course, don't forget to gently press the like button and leave a comment with your thoughts. Thanks for watching us, and see you next time.